Hi, welcome to the Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer, and on this show, I interview the movers and shakers in the world of property development and real estate. Now, before we dive in, a very quick word. This show is brought to you by a new visual technology that is quietly making waves in the property industry. Now, developers are using it. They are cutting design costs. They are accelerating off-plan sales in a way that sounds almost too good to be true. Now, if you are curious, message me directly on LinkedIn at Glen Palmer online or check out the show notes below. Now, today's episode, I am joined by Ken Farnon. Now, he is a true heavyweight in the construction industry. Ken is a highly experienced construction director working across high-rise residential and complex developments in the UK, known for disciplined delivery, commercial rigor, and a strategic oversight on both the operational side and the board level. Ken, really appreciate you taking time out your busy schedule to chat with me. Don't want you to miss your flight to and miss the rugby. So let's crack on, shall we?
Thank you very much, Glenn. Really excited to be on. What an introduction that I've got to live up to, but I'm sure we'll get through the next 15, 20 minutes and give you a real insight to what I do in terms of supporting the construction industry as a whole.
Excellent. So, right, before we crack off, the first question I ask absolutely every one of my guests, if time travel became a reality and you had a chance to go back in time to when you first started your career, what advice would the person that you are now tell your younger self?
A really good question. I thought about it many times. I started off as an engineer, and that the engineering side of site engineering side of it gave me a really good insight on how to understand drawings, interact with the guys and girls on site at the coalface.
Hmm.
So there was a real collaborative view. What would I tell myself? I think I tell myself, you've done the right thing. That was a really, a lot of people might go back and say, I would change this, I would change that. I don't think I would change anything. I think it was a really good basis to start my career from. Um, I got to see the real coal face of the project and understand what construction is about and what the tools of the trade are. What do we need to allow the operatives on site to actually do what they need to do, which is build?
Yeah.
So it's always a real focus on that. So Glenn, I don't think I'd really change much. I tell myself that was the right start. And funny enough, I do. And later on in my career, I've always encouraged and supported young engineers to come up, get that first couple of years under the belt and then go through that site management, project management route, very
Yeah.
similar to the route I took. And I think that gave me a good, broad sense of the whole of the construction industry and how the design process works, how the
Yeah.
delivery process works, and then just even that after sales side of it, particularly in the residential market. Um, I would tell myself to be a little bit more wiser with my money and invest a little bit wiser, but I don't think
Yeah.
time travel will allow that. But
Wouldn't we
yeah, no,
all? Yeah.
I wouldn't change very much. But I have seen, in my time, I have seen the construction industry evolve hugely
Yeah.
in that time and evolve for the better. It has
Yeah.
completely changed. Um, all good, and very positive. I think what I would do, something else I would do is probably encourage more people to come into this industry. If I had to
Yeah.
go back and tell people, I think when I was younger, perhaps you were a little bit embarrassed about working in the construction industry. It wasn't seen as a cutting edge industry. It wasn't seen, was seen as, if you couldn't do anything else, you ended up in the construction industry, and that is not the case. Definitely
No.
not the case.
And that's the bizarre thing, because we all have to live in houses. We all have to go to work to various, warehousing. So there's the commercial side of it. But yeah, it's
Infrastructure, Glenn. We have to use the roads. We have to use the trains.
exactly.
Airports. I'm just heading off from an airport in Glasgow. All the infrastructure from the airport in Glasgow till I arrive in Dublin, and that infrastructure that takes me from the airport to the hotel.
Yeah.
All of that is part of the construction industry and the legal side of it
Yeah.
and the sales side. There's so many different facets within the construction industry. that we probably don't promote.
Yeah.
We're not very good at self-promotion, but
No,
it's
no.
something I try to do, and particularly podcasts like this will promote how good
Yeah.
an industry it is.
Oh, brilliant. So, Ken, you've worked across, subcontractors, main contractors, self-delivery developers. From your perspective, where do complex construction projects most commonly start to sort of unravel? And then how do you nip that in the bud and, prevent it?
It's again another good question, and I suppose it's an answer we've been looking for many years. On the larger scale projects, you've got multiple teams,
Yeah.
and you've got sub teams within those. Engineering, you might have geotechnics, you might have structural engineering, civil engineering, infrastructural engineering, the architectural practice, multiple architectural practices coming together. I think you've got to set up the right culture for the project
Mm-hmm.
to begin with. You've got to have the right behaviors with the team. And I know it's a word that's banded about and a bit of a buzzword in construction. It is about that collaboration, and
Yeah.
really getting contractor early engagement is so important. And a lot of the time, we're going through a procurement process, and we may not have a contractor on board. And where we do things differently is we pay for that contractor during the PCSA stage, get them on board, get your contract, get that expertise in early to
Yeah.
support the design team, particularly in contracts such as an NEC contract or a JCT design and build contract. It's so important, and we're seeing a lot more of it now, where we've got two-stage tendering,
Mm-hmm.
where we will get at the second stage we do get appointed. Um, when I worked for subcontractors, it was just all competitive tendering,
Yeah.
and the client never got the benefit. They were looking at bottom line, particularly residential developers, and never seen the benefit of, we'll pay a contractor 50, £100,000 to get involved early on, and they'll save that easily, by looking at methodology, looking at different procurement routes, looking at the program, what's program betterment. So really, that early engagement is so important. Collaboration between the parties, no silo working.
Yeah.
But that all comes back to what I've said at the beginning: is that culture and the behavior. Set your culture out from the onset, and
Couldn't
I
agree
think
more.
that's important from a client perspective, and they can drive that. They can drive that through to the end product, and they'll
Yeah.
see that in the quality of the end product. And I think
Yeah.
that's where we've gone wrong for many years, and now we're getting issues such as the recladding issues, the quality issues in some of our structures, because it was a race to the bottom line, and that's not the way we should be moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And then with high-rise residential and these large schemes that are increasingly under pressure, there's cost, there's compliance, there's stakeholder scrutiny. Where do you see the biggest shift happening and how projects are firstly planned and then approved?
So I think particularly high rise, anything over the 18 meters that's now subject to the Building Safety Act and is deemed a HRB.
Yeah.
It's a quite a contentious subject. I think we were doing as an industry, we were doing a lot of what we should have been doing, but we weren't pulling it together. And that's we could say there has been a shift away from localized building control to privatized approved inspectors. Um, that has made a difference in the last 20 years in terms of compliance.
Hmm.
Um, there was a race to that bottom line again, and that comes up as a common thread or a common theme. I think with the Building Safety Act, there's a real focus now on where everything was design and build. You're actually building, and the design was following the build.
Hmm.
I think what we'll be doing now is you've got to get to at least what they call a stage 4 design. That has got to be fixed and locked in place before you make your submission to the building safety regulator for a gateway 2 approval.
Right.
I think that is going to change how we deliver high-rise developments, because it won't be quasi design and build, and there won't be all this value engineering. And it's a term that's used, and that's just 3D specification in my eyes. It's not true engineering. It's just
Yeah.
change those doors to a cheaper door, change those windows to a cheaper window, cladding, etc. I think it'll eliminate all of that, which I see as a positive.
Yeah, definitely.
It means that your end product, as a developer, it will give much more confidence to the end user, so the people that are buying the product, much the same as you buy a car and you get a warranty for 12 years, you'll get the same with your an apartment or flat or housing for that matter, any part of housing. So I think it's a good
Yeah.
thing, but I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
we need to get used to the compliance. It's not going away, and it's we need to embrace digital technologies to enable us to deliver that compliance.
Yeah. So, in your role as a director, when you're dealing with your boards, your trustees, or in investment committees for that matter, how effective are traditional drawings and reports at getting real buy-in? Or do you see a little bit of misalignment creeping in a little bit later? And you've just quite briefly mentioned the digitalization. How important is that in creating the visualization and communication between all of those stakeholders?
It's hugely important. I think the 2D information is dying out.
Yeah.
We're living in a 3D and 4D environment now, particularly in the construction industry, and where clients where clients are speculatively developing an office block, a warehouse, or even a block of flats, a residential block of flats for onward sale. It's really important for our end user and their tenants to understand what the product is they're getting. So that 3D environment, that BIM and all the
Mm.
other Revisto and other technologies that we've got to allow us to do that is so important. We can then start drawing from that information, that 3D environment. We could start drawing your traditional 2D information if people want to still live in that 2D environment in terms of reporting. But what we're seeing now is that our delivery programs are linked to our 3D world. So we get this 4D environment.
Yeah.
And it's hugely important when planning a project that you build it first in that 3D environment so that you understand the logistics and the complexities on how you actually deliver that project. You could have a project in central London that's surrounded by other live projects, live buildings, constrained sites by various things, like it could be substations, it could be roads. It helps us unlock sites as well in terms of potential, looking at the potential for future sites. So I think there is a digital shift in the construction industry, and I think they've really embraced it.
Mm.
And the next generation that are coming up through the ranks, as I said, from site engineers to site managers, project managers, QSs, they actually live in that environment now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again,
Heavily involved in it.
if you take something quite simple as just clash detection, we spent a huge amount of time rectification as we were building. It has eliminated about 90% of those problems and issues that we have seen on sites historically.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's more prevalent
Yeah.
now. It's really important, and it's really important that we link that 3D and 4D environment with our BMS systems for future proofing and onward maintenance once we hand the building over. So that's where we're seeing massive improvements.
Yeah. And moving on from that as well, so you've got this early stage visual clarity, being able to pretty much walk a scheme before you've even broken ground. Um, what would you say would also be do you think that there would be benefits to either materials handling, cost overruns, late design changes? You can make these changes very, very quickly in these 3D designs before you even broken ground. How important is that in getting buildings firstly approved quicker, early stakeholder engagement a lot better? Do you think that this is going to be the norm in the next couple of years, and how quickly is it going to be the norm?
I would say it's actually the norm now. on a lot of projects, on the bigger projects. If you invest, there is an investment, there is a cost to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's more prevalent in the commercial office world as opposed to the residential sector. That's more, it is very much a bottom line, the residential sector. You're selling to one end user, you're selling to a tenant. Whereas when you're in that commercial space world, you could have multiple tenants, and those tenants could have either a 5-year lease, 10-year lease, 20-year lease. So it gives them the flexibility to understand the building and how they can make changes to suit their requirements. If it could be a law firm that you're trying to invest in the first instance, that could quickly change to a tech company. They will have different needs, so you can change those needs digitally before you start breaking ground early on.
Yeah.
At a much reduced cost, because if you start making alterations on site, it comes at a premium,
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
for both a cost and time, and all of that side in terms of the environmental cost as well, as we're constantly trying to reduce the embodied carbon in our buildings. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's here. We use it in a lot of projects, but it does need investment and buy-in from everybody, all the stakeholders, and
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody needs. I think a lot of people need training and understanding. They're a little bit apprehensive, but when they see the outputs, I think they quickly change their mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And then finally, in the UK specifically, how much friction do planning, funding committees, and even stakeholder buy-in add to delivery timelines? And sort of what tends to slow decisions down the most?
So planning is always seems to be an issue, particularly when you start looking at the likes of London, where you've got quite still payments. You've got, to get, to say it's 13 weeks, there's a statutory period of 13 weeks to get a planning approval through.
Hmm.
The average time to get a planning approval through, depending on the project and the contentious nature of a project. Some projects are contentious. If it's a greenfield site or a brownfield site, what you're talking on an average development, it could be anything between 12, 18 months to
Yeah.
get it through the planning. Once you get it through the planning process, then be it residential, you've got to go through the compliance in terms of the Building Safety Act. That's possibly another, at the moment, it could be anything up to 12 months. So there's a lot of money spent going through those stages to get to a planning approval, because a lot of investors are looking, there's a higher risk if it doesn't have planning approval. Once you've got approval, the risk is much more reduced. So I think planning laws I think they need to change. I don't
Yeah.
blame planners, because they're under a lot of pressure themselves. They just don't have the resources. And I think in the actual decision-making process, what we lack is people to actually make decisions. Indecisiveness cost projects time and money.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can make a decision for the right reasons. It may be the wrong decisions, but you've moved forward. You're constantly moving forward, so you're not stagnating.
Hmm.
And that's what I think we lack, those decision making, those people that will make the decisions and stand by those decisions. But all the decisions that you do make will be informed. You've got information there to allow you to make it, so there will be informed decisions. So I think we need people to be stronger in that decision making process, stand by the decisions, and projects will move forward on that basis. That
Yeah.
will show leadership as well, and give confidence to stakeholders.
Yeah. Well, Ken, loved having you on the show. Really enjoyed the conversation and your view of construction as a C-suite operator. Once again, thanks very much to my listeners and viewers of YouTube as well. Ken, just before we sign off, if listeners or viewers want to get in contact with you and learn about what you actually do at Cooley Construction Management, what are the best ways for my listeners and viewers to do that?
Just drop me a line on ken.farnon, Farnon, at cooleycs.co.uk. Just check out our website. You'll see there's contact details there. I'm on LinkedIn, Kenneth Farnon on LinkedIn. We also have a recruitment company as well. So
Oh, wow.
Cooley recruitment. So we specifically recruit within the construction individuals, recruiting construction individuals, as opposed to salespeople recruiting construction individuals. So yeah,
Fantastic.
you can check us out. Glenn, an absolute pleasure and
Yeah.
a privilege to be asked to come on to the podcast. So
Thank
thanks
you
very
very much.
much,
Yeah.
and speak to everybody soon.
Yeah. And then, yeah, thank you very much, Ken.
Brilliant.
Just a quick reminder, this episode was supported by PropTech Visual Platform, changing how forward-thinking developers plan, pitch, and sell. It's not mainstream yet, but it will be. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you know where to find me. You've been listening to Blueprints to Buildings podcast. I'm your host, Glen Palmer. Today, I was joined by Ken Farnon. Thanks again for listening and watching, and I'll see you on the next episode.